The morning sun hit Marcus Chen's face at exactly 6:47 a.m. as it did every day. He didn't need an alarm anymore. His body had learned to wake before the rage could fully bloom, back when he still had hoped that a new day might feel different. It didn't. The rage was already there, waiting, patient as a predator. He stood at the kitchen island of his Bel Air home, staring at the security feed on his iPad. The timestamp read 6:34 a.m., 3 minutes ago. His neighbor, Karen Whitmore from the property line over, had somehow bypassed the new gate lock he'd installed last month, the third gate he'd installed in 2 years. Marcus watched the grainy footage. Karen, her blonde hair tied in a ponytail, wearing designer athletic wear that probably cost more than his first car, padding barefoot across his brick patio toward the pool. She moved with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no in her life. Probably hadn't been. He pulled up the previous clips. There she was on Tuesday, doing laps in his pool at 5 a.m. There she was on Thursday, floating on his inflatable lounge chair, eating fruit from his kitchen. There she was on Saturday, conducting what looked like a full yoga session on his deck, her phone propped up as if she were filming content for her 847,000 Instagram followers. Marcus was a reasonable man. He told himself this 1,000 times. He had built his reputation on being reasonable, on being the kind of person who could negotiate multi-million-dollar deals without raising his voice, who could navigate the treacherous waters of Los Angeles real estate development with diplomacy and grace. He was the architect of 17 commercial properties across Southern California. He was 42 years old, financially independent, and had never raised a hand to anyone in his life. And yet, looking at Karen's trespassing in 4K resolution, something in him wanted to snap. He heard footsteps on the marble stairs. His girlfriend, Jessica, emerged in one of his dress shirts, her dark hair tumbling over her shoulders. She was beautiful in that early morning way, vulnerable, unsuspecting, before the day's demands carved away at her softness. They'd been together for 8 months. He loved her, mostly, when he wasn't thinking about other things. "You're up early," she said, settling next to him with a cup of coffee. "Bad dream." "Karen's in the pool," he said flatly. Jessica's face went through several expressions at once: surprise, annoyance, resignation. "Again." "Again? Did you call the police this time?" "No point. They said she has access to a shared easement that technically allows her across the property line, as long as she doesn't damage anything." He nearly laughed at the absurdity. "Damage? She's been using my pool as her personal infinity edge for 2 years." Jessica set down her coffee and looked at the iPad. Karen was doing a backstroke now, moving through the water with athletic precision. The morning light caught the diamond pendant at her throat. Real diamonds. Marcus had looked it up after the first invasion. Karen's husband, Derek, was a television producer worth somewhere north of 200 million. She had everything, and yet she still wanted his pool. "She's not hurting anything," Jessica said carefully, which was what she always said, which meant she didn't want to talk about this anymore, which meant Marcus needed to stop thinking about it, but couldn't. "It's my property." "I know. It's a violation." "I know, baby, but what are you going to do? Really do?" Marcus didn't answer. He was looking at the edge of the pool where he'd had a contractor install a decorative rock garden just last week. Smooth stones, imported from Japan, expensive and elegant and completely unnecessary. The contractor had asked why he wanted it. Marcus hadn't answered because the real answer was simple and ugly. He wanted there to be something in Karen's way. He wanted an obstacle. He wanted friction. He wanted her to feel, for once, the way he felt every time he discovered her floating in his pool like she owned it. "You're thinking something," Jessica said. It wasn't a question. "I'm thinking I'm going to install another gate, and a fence, and maybe a moat." She smiled, but it was the smile she gave to children and the mentally unstable. "Why don't you just talk to her?" "I have talked to her. Nicely." Marcus stood, closing out of the security app. "I've been nice, I've been reasonable, I've documented every trespass, I've called her husband, I've contacted a lawyer, I've installed 3 separate gate mechanisms. He stopped himself, because the next sentence was going to be I've fantasized about catching her in my pool and teaching her a lesson. And he couldn't say that to Jessica, not out loud, not while she was looking at him with that mixture of love and concern and distance that said she was already pulling away. Already deciding that maybe he wasn't the reasonable man she'd thought he was. Maybe it's not about the pool, Jessica said quietly. What's that supposed to mean? I don't know, it just seems like this is becoming more than property rights. It feels personal. It was personal. That was the whole problem. Corinne Whitmore had become a symbol of everything that was wrong with Lowe's Angels, with the world, people who took what they wanted because they could afford to lose when they couldn't get away with it. People who didn't respect boundaries because no one had ever taught them to. People like his ex-wife. Marcus didn't say this. Instead, he went upstairs to shower, and while the water ran hot over his shoulders, he thought about what Jessica had said. It felt personal. Of course it felt personal. Corinne had made it personal the moment she decided his pool was hers to use. By the time he came back downstairs, she was gone. The pool was empty again, the water clear and untouched, waiting. That afternoon, Marcus sat in his office in downtown LA, a corner suite on the 32nd floor with a view of the entire sprawl of the city, and made a decision that felt less like a choice and more like a capitulation to something that had been building for months. He called his lawyer, a sharp woman named Patricia Okonkwo, who'd been handling his property disputes for 5 years. I want to do something permanent about Corinne, he said. Patricia, ever practical, asked the obvious question, what kind of permanent? Legal within the law, but permanent. Give me a week. I'm going to look into that easement claim. There might be grounds to challenge it. But a week felt like too long. Marcus felt the pressure of time in an irrational way, not because Corinne was escalating, but because he was. He could feel himself tightening like a rope, fraying at the edges. Jessica had noticed it. His business partner, Dev, had noticed it. Even his assistant had mentioned that he seemed tense lately. The pool had become an obsession. That evening he drove to Home Depot and spent 3 hours browsing camera equipment, speaker systems, and pool maintenance tools he didn't need. He found himself in the landscaping section, looking at decorative elements that could create subtle obstacles. Not dangerous obstacles, just obstacles. Things that would interrupt her free passage. He was standing in front of a display of ornamental pool markers, small brass plaques with depth measurements when his phone buzzed. A text from Jessica, still at work. Don't wait for dinner. Take care of yourself. Code for I can feel you spiraling, and I'm not sure I want to be around for it. Marcus bought the pool markers anyway, along with a high-end security system that would send alerts to his phone the moment anyone approached his property. He'd install it himself. He had the technical knowledge. His ex-wife used to say he could solve any problem if he spent enough time with it, which had been her way of saying he was obsessive, which was probably fair. Over the next 3 days, Marcus worked on his pool like a man possessed. He rerouted the underwater lighting. He recalibrated the temperature sensors. He had the deck repainted with a special non-slip coating that also happened to be slightly uneven, nothing dangerous, but not as comfortable for walking barefoot. He hung new speakers, adjusted the gate locks, and installed the security system with hardware that was top of the line. Jessica came home on the second day of this project and watched him work from the deck. He could feel her watching, could feel her trying to decide something. What are you building? She finally asked. Safety, he said, and boundaries. Marcus, I'm handling it. She didn't come home the next night. She texted that she was staying at her friend Lauren's apartment, that she needed some space. Marcus, covered in pool chemicals and sweat, didn't argue. He was too close to something now, could feel it like a vibration in his bones. The obsession had solidified into something that felt almost like purpose. Patricia called on the 4th day with news. The easement claim is legitimate, she said. It was established in 1987 as part of a water rights agreement between the two properties. Corinne's husband inherited his side of the easement when his father passed. It's airtight. So I have no legal recourse. Not through the easement itself. But here's what I found that's interesting. The easement specifically allows passage for water access during certain hours, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., Monday through Friday. It doesn't extend to weekends, and it doesn't allow for recreational use. It's for maintenance access and water acquisition. Marcus felt something shift in his chest. So if she uses it any other time, or for recreational purposes like swimming, we have a case. It would be a breach of the original easement covenant. I'd need documentation, timestamps, photographs, legal proof. I have 2 years of security footage, Marcus said quietly. Then we can move forward. After the call, Marcus stood by his pool, His pool, legally his pool, even if Karen Whitmore seemed to think otherwise, and felt the weight of what he was about to do. This was legal. This was justified. This was what happened when you pushed back against people who had no respect for boundaries. But it was also something else, something colder, something that felt less like justice and more like revenge dressed up in the language of property law. He thought about Jessica's question, "Why does this feel so personal?" The answer was sitting on the other side of his property line, probably right now, in her mansion with the designer everything and the television producer husband, and the Instagram followers who believed in the curated version of her life she presented to the world. A woman who had never been told no, who took what she wanted because she'd always been allowed to. And he was going to make sure she learned. The honey trap, as Marcus had come to think of it in the privacy of his own mind, was born from a conversation with Dev at the gym 3 days later. "You're distracted," Dev said, spotting him on the bench press. "Business is fine, better than fine, so what's the problem?" Marcus set down the weights and wiped his face. "My neighbor keeps trespassing." Dev, who had known Marcus for 15 years and could read him in ways Marcus sometimes didn't like, raised an eyebrow. "The hot blonde from Instagram." "You know about that?" "Everyone knows about that. She's famous for sneaking into people's pools. There's a whole subreddit about it." Dev sat down next to him. "So what, you've called the police?" "Legal system is complicated." "I bet, so what are you going to do?" Marcus hadn't meant to tell him, but sitting there, sweating and exhausted and unable to think about anything but the pool, the gates, the decorative rocks, the speaker system, the security footage, it all came out. Dev listened without interrupting. When Marcus finished, his business partner was quiet for a long moment. "You're going to trap her," Dev finally said. "I'm going to set a boundary." "No, you're going to trap her, make it obvious, get her on camera, use it legally against her." Dev stood up, grabbed his water bottle. "And I'm telling you right now, and I say this with love, that's going to feel amazing for about 20 minutes and then it's going to feel like shit for the next 20 years. It's legal. So is a lot of stuff that will destroy your life if you do it wrong. You've got a good thing with Jessica. You've got a business. You've got a reputation. And you're about to put all of that in a box to prove a point to a woman who doesn't care about you." Marcus didn't respond. Dev left him there, still in his gym clothes, surrounded by the clanking of weights and the ambient sounds of other men trying to sculpt themselves into something harder, something better, something less vulnerable to the world. That night, Marcus ordered specialized equipment online, a pool depth pressure sensor, an automated gate system that would require a voice command to open, an enhancement to his security system that would allow him to trigger an alert if certain conditions were met. He wasn't going to hurt her, that's what he told himself. He was just going to show her what happened when she crossed the line. He was just going to teach her a lesson. The setup took another week to perfect. Marcus worked every evening after leaving his office, every weekend while Jessica stayed away. She texted occasionally, polite texts, update texts, the kind of texts from someone who was mentally preparing for a goodbye. He didn't try to stop her. How could he? He was busy building something. The new gate would open with a voice command, but only to specific voices. His voice. It was for security, or that's what he told himself. The pool area had a new section near the deep end. Marcus had instructed the contractor to reposition the depth markers to create a subtle visual gradient that made the water appear shallower than it was, not dangerous. He'd checked the actual depth 100 times, still 9 feet at the deep end, still plenty of water. But the optical illusion would work. He knew how the human eye responded to visual cues. He'd studied it. He'd also installed a new speaker system that could play sounds at frequencies designed to trigger disorientation in human subjects. Low frequencies that made people uncertain of their equilibrium. Nothing that would hurt her. Just something that would make her second-guess her balance. And in the middle of the pool deck, arranged with precision, he'd scattered the decorative stones. Japanese river rocks, smooth and expensive, arranged to create a subtle obstacle course between the gate and the pool. The trap was elegant in its simplicity. She would come, as she always did, probably on a Saturday morning when his gates were typically inactive due to the easement. The new system would let her through initially. He'd programmed it that way. She'd feel welcome, invited even, the way she always did when she trespassed. And then she'd walk across the deck, hearing the low frequencies that would make her brain sing with uncertainty. Her feet would stumble slightly on the carefully placed rocks, nothing catastrophic, just enough to make her falter. And when she faltered, when her balance was already compromised by the audio frequency and the subtle obstacle, the deck would feel uneven beneath her feet. And she would fall into the pool. The water was deep. She was a strong swimmer. She would be fine, but she would be embarrassed. She would have fallen in his pool, in his trap, and everyone would know about it. There would be a moment, a beautiful, crystalline moment, where Karen Whitmore would understand that she couldn't just take what she wanted, that boundaries existed, that some people would push back. And it would all be caught on his security cameras, documented, legal, undeniable. Marcus stood on his deck one evening, looking at his work, and felt something that might have been satisfaction or might have been the beginning of self-disgust. He couldn't tell the difference anymore. That night, Jessica came home to pack the rest of her things. She moved like someone who'd already left, collecting her belongings with the efficiency of someone who had decided, long ago, exactly what she would take. Marcus watched from the bedroom doorway, not helping, not stopping her, just watching. "I can't do this," she said finally when the last bag was packed. "Whatever this is, I can't. I'm handling a problem." "No, you're not. You're obsessing. You're building something, and I don't know what it is, but it's not healthy, and it's not you, or at least, it's not the version of you I thought I knew." Marcus wanted to argue that he was the same person, that he was simply being assertive, standing up for himself. But looking at Jessica, at the sadness in her eyes, he couldn't quite make the argument stick. "I'm sorry," she said, and she sounded like she meant it. "I do care about you, but not like this, not while you're this." After she left, Marcus was alone in the house for the first time in months. He went to his office and pulled up the security feeds on his monitor, watching the empty pool in real time. The water was perfectly still, waiting. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Hey, this is Karen. Derek gave me your number. I wanted to apologize about the pool thing. Would love to make it up to you. New Year's party next weekend, or come swim in our pool sometime. Really want to be better neighbors. XO." Marcus read the message 3 times. He could feel the trap beginning to seal itself around him now, the irony of it becoming clear. He'd spent weeks building something for her, but what he'd really built was a prison for himself. He looked at the pool, at the carefully arranged rocks, at the speaker system that could make people lose their balance, at the optical illusions and the pressure sensors, and all the elaborate architecture of his revenge. And he made a decision. It was a Saturday morning, 6:15 a.m. Marcus had disarmed the security gate. He had disabled the low-frequency speakers. He had left the decorative rocks exactly as they were. They looked nice, after all, and they weren't actually an obstacle, just aesthetically arranged. He was sitting in his office when he heard the gate open. He watched the security feed as Karen walked across his deck. She moved with her usual casual confidence, her usual assumption that the world was her personal playground. She was wearing a black one-piece bathing suit and carried a phone in one hand. She was setting up to take a selfie at the pool when she stepped on one of the rocks. It shifted. It shouldn't have shifted. Marcus had anchored them, but this one had come loose, probably from the landscaper moving it yesterday. Karen's foot caught. She stumbled. And then she fell. The water closed over her with a splash that echoed across the deck. Marcus was moving before he consciously decided to move, running down the stairs, bursting through the back door, his heart in his throat. She surfaced a second later, sputtering and gasping, and for a moment, just a moment, her face was pure panic. Then she started swimming for the shallow end, and Marcus could breathe again. She emerged from the water, pulling the waterlogged phone, which had slipped from her grip. Her hair was plastered to her face. Her expensive bathing suit was soaked. She was laughing, shaking her head, laughing harder. "Oh my God," she gasped, sitting on the edge of the pool. "I am so stupid. I totally lost my balance on those rocks." She looked up at Marcus and her expression changed. "Oh, you, hi, I'm so sorry. I got your number from Derek and I was going to ask permission, but then I do this thing where I just do things without asking, and it's a real problem, and..." Marcus was staring at her. This was not how the script was supposed to go. In the script, she was supposed to be humiliated, angry, defeated. She was supposed to learn a lesson. But Karen was just laughing, dripping and embarrassed and laughing at herself. "I fell in your pool," she said, meeting his eyes. "Which is pretty karma appropriate considering I've been using it without asking. Do you hate me?" And Marcus realized, in that moment, that he absolutely did not hate her. What he hated was the emptiness he'd filled with this obsession, the loneliness he'd dressed up as principal, the way he'd let her become a symbol of everything that was wrong with the world when she was just a woman who'd made a stupid choice about a pool. "There's a guest house," he heard himself say. "Second building over, there's a shower there, towels, whatever you need." Corinne nodded slowly, as if she couldn't quite believe what she was hearing. As she stood to go, she turned back. "I'm really sorry. About the pool, about being a bad neighbor, I'm going to stop. Even though the easement technically allows it, it's clearly upsetting you, and that's not okay." And then she was gone, leaving wet footprints across his carefully designed deck, leaving the pool as empty as it had been before, leaving Marcus standing alone with the realization that the trap he'd built was never meant for her. The guest house shower ran for exactly 47 minutes. Marcus knew because he sat in his office, watching the secondary security feed with the sound off, unable to look away. Corinne emerged wrapped in one of his restoration hardware towels, her hair turbaned, her expression softer than it had been before, chastened, thoughtful, like someone who just looked in a mirror for the first time in years. She walked back through his yard toward the gate. At the fence line, she paused and looked back at his house, and Marcus had the unsettling feeling that she was looking directly at him, at the window where he sat, though that was impossible. She couldn't see him. But she could sense him, he was certain of it. She didn't try to come back that weekend, or the next. The pool remained undisturbed, and Marcus found himself checking the security feeds with less frequency, then more frequency, then obsessively, as if the absence of her was somehow worse than her presence had been. Jessica didn't come back at all. She came to get more things on a Thursday afternoon when Marcus was at work. She left a note on the kitchen counter. "I know you're trying to be better. I can see it. But I need to be with someone who's already better, not someone who's in the process of becoming. I hope you find that, Marcus. I really do." The words were kind enough to be cutting. They took up maybe 50 characters, but they seemed to contain the entire history of their relationship. His faults, her patience, the slow calcification of something that had once felt warm. He read the note 17 times and then recycled it, as if destroying the physical object might destroy the truth it contained. Work became harder to focus on. He was in the middle of negotiating a massive development deal in Santa Monica. $50 million, 3 years of work, his biggest project to date, and he found himself in meetings where his business partner Dev was doing all the talking, and Marcus was distracted by something else entirely. "You're not here," Dev said to him one afternoon in the privacy of his office. They'd been partners for 15 years. Dev had every right to be frustrated. "Bodily, you're here, but mentally, you're somewhere else, and I need you here. Jessica left you. That's painful, but we've got a company to run." "I know." "Do you? Because you don't look like you know. You look like a man who's been living on an island his entire life and just discovered that there are other islands, and he's not sure if he wants to go back home." Marcus looked out the window at the sprawl of Lowe's Angels. 32 floors below, people were living their lives with an assumption that their choices mattered, that actions had predictable consequences, that if you just worked hard enough and planned carefully enough, you could make the world bend to your will. He had lived that way for 42 years. The pool had taught him something different. "I need to take some time off," Marcus said. "How much time?" "I don't know yet." Dev didn't argue. He'd known Marcus long enough to recognize when his friend had reached a bifurcation point, a moment where the previous trajectory was no longer viable. "Okay, but Marcus, whatever you're going through, don't make any permanent decisions. Life has a way of looking different when you're not in the middle of it." Marcus took 2 weeks off. He didn't go anywhere. He stayed in his house, in his empty house, and he thought about the trap he'd built, and he thought about Corinne falling into it, and he thought about the moment where she'd laughed instead of crying, and he thought about how that moment had crystallized something in him that he'd been trying to bury. He was not, fundamentally, a person who should get what he wanted. This sounds like a strange revelation for a man in his early 40s who'd built a successful career, a comfortable life, a reputation for excellence. But sitting alone in his house with the pool outside waiting like a patient predator, Marcus understood something. He had spent his entire adult life getting what he wanted. His first marriage, he'd wanted it, so he'd pursued it. When his wife had cheated on him, he'd wanted vengeance, so he'd made sure everyone in their social circle knew about it. His business success, He'd wanted it, so he'd pushed Dev into agreements that were technically fair but emotionally extractive. Jessica, he'd wanted her, so he'd used charm and resources to convince her that wanting him was the same as loving him. And Corinne's pool trespass. He'd wanted to punish her, so he'd spent weeks building an elaborate trap, all within the law, all technically justified, all fundamentally about making her pay for the crime of having access to something he owned. He realized, his ex-wife's description of him made flesh, obsessive. And obsession, he was learning, was just love with the humanity removed. On the morning of the 15th day, Marcus made a decision. He was going to the Whitmore's house. Corinne's house was twice the size of his, set back from the street on an acre of landscaped grounds that must have required a full-time staff to maintain. The architecture was modern Mediterranean, the kind of place that looked like it had never had a stain, a wrinkle, or an unkind word spoken within its walls. Derek Whitmore answered the door in athleisure that probably cost more than Marcus's watch. He had the kind of tan that suggested a recent trip to Cabo, the kind of teeth that had never seen a cavity, the kind of handshake that was just slightly too firm. "Marcus, come in, come in. Corinne said you might stop by." He didn't sound annoyed. He sounded delighted, the way you sound when a problem has been solved without your intervention. "She's in the pool house. Let me get her." As Derek disappeared into the mansion, Marcus stood in the foyer and tried not to think about how easy it would have been to slip into this life if things had gone differently. If he'd been born slightly richer, if his father had had different connections, if he hadn't married a woman who found him too ambitious and not ambitious enough simultaneously. Corinne emerged from the back of the house wearing white linen shorts and a tank top, her hair in a fresh braid. Up close, she looked younger than her Instagram suggested, maybe 37 or 38, but with the kind of easy confidence that made age irrelevant. "Hi," she said, and there was something in her voice that suggested she understood what this visit meant, why he'd come, what he was trying to accomplish. "I wanted to apologize," Marcus said. It came out more sharply than he intended. "For what?" "For the trap." Corinne blinked. Her expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes, recognition, confirmation, disappointment that he'd thought she didn't know. "You did apologize," she said calmly. "You let me use your guest shower. That was generous. I built the trap before that. The rocks, the lights, the acoustic system. I designed it all to make you fall." "I know. You know." "Of course I know. Marcus, I've been trespassing in people's pools for 15 years. Do you think I don't understand the psychology of boundary setting? I've been thrown into pools by angry residents. I've been pepper sprayed. I've been arrested twice. I'm extremely aware of what people are capable of when I violate their spaces." She moved to the kitchen and poured 2 glasses of water without asking if he wanted one. "What I also know is that most of those traps don't work the way people intend. You can plan to hurt someone, but you can't control what actually happens. That's the part people miss." Marcus accepted the water. "Why do you do it, the trespassing?" Corinne sat down on a stool and considered the question with the kind of seriousness usually reserved for philosophy. "Because I grew up without anything. My father was a drunk. My mother left when I was 9. I lived in foster care in 3 different states, and in every single one I had nothing that was mine. No room of my own, no space that was safe. And then I got older and I got beautiful, which opened doors in LA, and I married Derek, who gave me everything. And I have a beautiful life. But I still have this feeling that it could disappear at any moment, that I'm borrowing it all, living on borrowed time and borrowed money and borrowed space." She paused to drink her water. "So I trespass. I use other people's pools because it reminds me that I can take things, that I can move through the world and claim what I want, even if it doesn't belong to me. It's a way of proving that no one can actually stop me, that no boundary is permanent." Corinne smiled sadly. "Pretty fucked up, right?" "Jessica said it was personal," Marcus said. "She was right. It was personal, not because of you, because of me. Because you're obsessive. Because I'm lonely." The words sat between them like a physical object. Corinne didn't try to comfort him or deny it. She just nodded, as if he'd confirmed something she already knew. "The trap," she said. "What would you have done with it if it had worked the way you planned?" "I don't know anymore." "Would you have used it against me legally?" "Yes." "To what end?" Marcus realized he had no answer. In all his planning, in all his elaborate design, he had never envisioned what came after. The satisfaction would have lasted maybe an hour. Then what? Would he have felt better? Would he have felt less alone? I think, Karen said carefully, that you might want to talk to someone professional. Someone not me, obviously, but someone who understands obsession and loneliness and the things we build because we don't know how to just ask for connection. Is that what you tell yourself when you trespass? No, when I trespass, I tell myself that I deserve to take what I want, but I'm not recommending my coping mechanisms. I'm actually in therapy now, working on understanding why I do it, how to stop. Derek got tired of calling lawyers, so he made it a condition of him staying. She smiled. Apparently threatening to leave was the thing that finally stuck. Marcus finished his water. It was cold and clean and perfect, the kind of water that tasted like privilege. I should go, he said. Will you be okay? Karen asked, and it was such a simple question that he almost broke. Eventually. He called a therapist that night, a woman named Dr. Patel who specialized in obsessive patterns and relational pathology. His first appointment was 3 weeks away, which felt both too soon and too far off. He filled the time by going back to work, by showing up for Dev, by beginning the slow process of dismantling the trap he'd built. He had the decorative rocks removed. He disabled the acoustic system. He reset the security cameras to their default neutral settings. He had the visual illusions on the pool deck corrected. It took 2 weeks and felt like peeling off his own skin. Jessica didn't respond to his message, which he'd known was likely. Some doors, once closed, don't reopen, but he sent her flowers anyway and a note that said, "You were right, about all of it. I'm working on it." The first session with Dr. Patel was excruciating. Tell me about the pool, she said, and Marcus spent 50 minutes describing his obsession, his trap, his loneliness, his rage. Dr. Patel listened without interrupting, occasionally taking notes, occasionally meeting his eyes with an expression that was neither judgmental nor forgiving, just present. At the end of the session, she said, "You built a trap because you needed to feel control, but what you really needed was to feel seen. Has anyone made you feel seen recently?" My business partner, maybe. Maybe. He called me out when I was in the middle of it, told me I was destroying myself. I didn't listen, but he stayed around anyway. That sounds like seeing, that sounds like care. Dr. Patel stood, signaling the end of the session. Next week, I want you to do something. I want you to go to that pool, and I want you to swim in it alone and just notice what it feels like. Notice if the water cares who you are. Notice if the pool knows about your obsession. Marcus wanted to argue that the pool was just water, that it couldn't care about anything. But he understood what she was doing. She was trying to break the association between the pool and his elaborate internal narrative. He went the next evening at sunset. He stood at the edge of his pool in his swimming trunks and felt like a man on the ledge of a bridge, about to make a decision that couldn't be unmade. Then he dove in. The water was exactly body temperature. He'd set the heater to that years ago because Jessica liked it. He floated on his back and looked up at the sky, which was turning purple and orange and every color between. And he thought about Karen falling in, about the moment where she'd laughed instead of crying, about the moment where she'd said, "I'm really sorry," and meant it. He thought about a woman who'd spent 15 years trespassing in other people's pools because she needed to feel like she could take the world, and a man who'd spent 2 years building traps for her because he needed to feel like he could stop her, and how both of them were just lonely people trying to construct meaning out of water and property lines and things that ultimately didn't matter. He floated there until the light was gone and he couldn't see his hands in front of his face, and he didn't feel better, but he felt something. He felt honest. The turning point came 3 weeks into therapy when Dr. Patel asked him, "What if you called her?" "Karen, would that be so terrible? I built her a trap. And she forgave you from what you've told me, or rather, she understood you. She's not the victim you needed her to be." Marcus understood what Dr. Patel was trying to do. She was trying to get him to treat Karen as a human being instead of a symbol. It was the most basic therapeutic work, and it was also the hardest. He called her number on a Saturday evening. Derek answered. "Marcus, how's the pool? Karen said you've been swimming a lot lately." Of course, Karen had been watching his security feeds. Of course she knew. "Is she home?" Marcus asked. Derek got her without question. When Karen came on the line, she sounded surprised but not displeased. "I wanted to apologize again," Marcus said. More specifically, I built a trap for you. I spent weeks planning it. I wanted to humiliate you. And I did it because you made me feel like I had no control. I know, Karen said. You told me that already. I wanted to ask you something. Why did you forgive me, or not forgive? Why did you understand? Karen was quiet for a moment. Then, because I recognized myself. I've spent my whole life taking things that don't belong to me because I don't believe I deserve things that do. You spent your life trying to control things because you don't believe anything is truly yours. We're both just people with broken compasses trying to navigate the world. Should we get coffee? He asked, and as soon as the words were out, he knew it was a mistake. No, Karen said gently. That would be bad for both of us. You'd be using me to fill a hole. I'd be using you to feel like I'm helping someone. And neither of those things is actually connection. But you could call Dev and go to your therapy. And maybe eventually you could build something real with someone new, someone who doesn't carry all of this history with you. I don't think I know how to do that, Marcus said. Neither did I, neither do most people, probably. But we can learn. After they hung up, Marcus sat in his kitchen and understood that Karen Whitmore was smarter than he'd given her credit for. She was also kind in a way that didn't excuse her trespassing, but that explained it, contextualized it, made it human. He looked at his pool through the kitchen window and realized that it didn't matter anymore. The pool was just water. Karen was just a woman. His obsession was just the sound his loneliness made when it had nowhere else to go. The real work was building something new. The final thing that happened in part 2 came as a text, 6 weeks after his first conversation with Karen. Derek and I are leaving LA. He took a job in New York. I wanted you to know so you didn't think I was trespassing anymore if you noticed me in the pool. I'm not. That chapter is closed. I hope you find what you're looking for. I really do. K. Marcus read the text and felt the exact weight of what he'd been carrying begin to shift. She was leaving. The symbol was evacuating, and he would have to learn to live with the person he was without the external architecture of the trap. That night he called Dev. I'm ready to come back to work, he said, and I want to talk about restructuring our partnership, specifically the parts where I've been extractive and you've just accepted it. On the other end, Dev laughed, not unkindly but with genuine surprise. Who are you, and what have you done with Marcus Chen? A better version, maybe. I'm working on it. Then welcome back. We've got a lot of work to do. As he hung up, Marcus looked at his pool one last time that evening. Empty, waiting, still holding all of the possibility he'd once tried to trap within it. The water reflected the stars, unconcerned with human longing, unconcerned with human obsession, simply itself, simply true. 4 months into therapy, Marcus had built something that resembled stability, not happiness, not yet, but the infrastructure that happiness could theoretically be constructed upon. He was back at work full-time. He was swimming in his pool daily without obsessing over it. He had dinner with Dev twice a week where they talked about business and personal failings in equal measure. He had not called or messaged Jessica, respecting the boundary she'd set. The world had moved on. Karen Whitmore was gone. The trap was dismantled. The house was quiet in a way that felt cleaner than lonely. And then his ex-wife called. It was a Tuesday afternoon. Marcus was in his office when his phone showed a name he hadn't seen in 7 years, Claire Chen. Not Claire Chen anymore. She'd remarried, was probably Claire Anderson by now. But his phone still called her Claire Chen, and seeing her name caused a specific kind of panic that was both familiar and unwelcome. I heard about your breakup, she said without preamble, the way people do when they've been building up to a phone call for weeks. From Michael's soccer coach's wife, who knows someone who knows Dev. Michael was their son. There was the operative word, though Michael had chosen to live with Claire full-time when he turned 16 and was now 19 and in college in San Francisco. Hi, Claire, Marcus said carefully. I wanted to tell you something. Michael told me something, actually, and I wanted you to hear it from me instead of from him, which is why I'm calling instead of just having him call you. Though he's been meaning to call you, which is its own problem, but that's not what I'm calling about. Marcus had forgotten how Claire sounded when she was anxious, how she compressed her thoughts into run-on sentences, how she led with peripheral information before getting to the point. He'd spent 5 years married to this woman. He'd known her, and then he hadn't. Claire, what is it? Michael is in therapy. He's been in therapy for 2 years. And his therapist asked him about his relationship with you, and Michael said he thinks you don't actually like him. That you like the idea of having a son, but the actual Michael, the real person, you were never particularly interested in. Marcus felt the words like a physical impact. This was not something he'd asked Claire to call and tell him. This was not something he'd known he needed to know, but somehow, having heard it, he understood that it was true. "Is he right?" Claire asked, and her voice was gentler now, the way it got when she was trying to be kind to him. "I don't know," Marcus said and meant it. "You should figure it out, and you should call him, and you should tell him the truth, whatever that is. Because he's 19 years old and he's in therapy thinking his father doesn't like him, and that's something that's in his life because of you, and even if that's not fair, it's true." After Claire hung up, Marcus sat at his desk for a very long time. He thought about Michael, about watching him play soccer when Michael was 6, about teaching him to swim at 7, about the gradually increasing distance that had appeared between them as Michael got older, and had his own interests and opinions that didn't align with Marcus's expectations. He realized, with the clarity that sometimes comes from being shown something obvious, that he had treated Michael the same way he'd treated Karen Whitmore, as a symbol of something he could control, and when the control had proven impossible, his interest had waned. He left work early. He drove home. He sat in his office and drafted a text to his son. "I heard you're in therapy. That's good. I'm in therapy too. I'm trying to be better. Would you want to talk? Not about reconciliation or anything heavy, just talk." Michael's response came 3 hours later. "Yeah, okay. When?" They set up a video call for the following evening. Marcus spent the intervening hours with Dr. Patel, preparing for the conversation he had no framework for. "He may say things that hurt," Dr. Patel said, "and you need to receive them without defending yourself. Can you do that?" "I don't know. Try." Michael appeared on the screen exactly on time, and Marcus was struck by how much his son looked like him. The same sharp jawline, the same intensity in his eyes, the same way of holding tension in his shoulders. Michael was wearing a hoodie with the University of San Francisco logo, and he was guarded in a way that suggested he'd been building walls against his father for a very long time. "Hey," Michael said. "Hey, thanks for calling. Mom said you wanted to talk." I do. I don't really know how to do this, to be honest." Marcus paused. "I talked to your mom. She mentioned some things your therapist brought up." Michael's expression shifted, not angry exactly, but resigned. "I told her not to call you." "I'm glad she did." Michael didn't respond to that. He was looking away from the screen, and Marcus could see his jaw working, could see him deciding how honest to be. "Do you like me?" Michael finally asked. And the question was so direct, so loaded with the weight of 19 years of wondering, that Marcus had to sit with it for a moment. "I don't think I've known how to like you," Marcus said. "I've known how to want things for you. I've known how to be disappointed when you didn't align with what I wanted. But I don't think I actually sat down and got to know the person you are and liked him for being that person." "That sucks," Michael said flatly. "It does. And now you're in therapy, so I'm supposed to think that makes it okay." "No, I think therapy is me trying to understand why I couldn't do that and how to do it going forward. But I'm also saying it to you because you deserve to know. I fucked up. I was a shitty father. Not in obvious ways, maybe, but in the way that counts." Michael was quiet for a long moment. When he looked back at the camera, his eyes were shiny with unshed tears. "I tried really hard to be what you wanted," he said. "In middle school, I didn't want to play soccer anymore, but I knew you liked it, so I played. In high school, I wanted to study art and design, but you said that wasn't a stable career, so I was going to study business. It took me until college to understand that I was living for you, not for me." "What do you want to study?" Marcus asked. "Graphic design. I'm changing my major next semester." "That's great. That's really great, Michael. I'm sorry it took you until college to feel like you could do that. That's on me." They talked for another hour. Not about reconciliation, but about who Michael actually was, what he actually wanted, what his life actually looked like. Michael told him about a girl he was seeing, about his roommate, about a design project he was working on that he was genuinely excited about. And Marcus listened without inserting his opinions or his expectations, without redirecting the conversation toward what he wanted. He just listened. When they were ending the call, Michael said, "This was weird." "Bad weird or good weird?" Just weird, but maybe we can do this again sometime. I'd like that. After Michael signed off, Marcus sat in the dark of his office and cried in a way he hadn't allowed himself to since his divorce. Not because Michael had forgiven him. Michael hadn't, and might not, ever fully forgive him. But because for the first time, Marcus understood that Michael was not responsible for fixing Marcus's emotional needs. Michael was just a person, 19 years old, trying to figure out who he was and what he wanted, and he deserved to do that without the weight of his father's expectations crushing him. The next shift came from an unexpected direction. Marcus received a certified letter from Corinne's lawyer, not Corinne herself, but her legal representative. For a moment, his heart seized. Was she suing him? Had the trap had some consequence he hadn't foreseen? He opened it with trembling hands. Dear Mr. Chen, Mrs. Corinne Whitmore has authorized me to reach out regarding a matter of property access and usage. She has decided to formally waive her rights to utilize the easement on your property. This waiver is permanent and legally binding. She wanted you to know that this decision comes from a place of personal growth and closure, not from any legal obligation or threat. Additionally, Mrs. Whitmore has donated $50,000 to the Los Angeles Community Pool Association in your name, in honor of what she describes as a man learning to see his own reflection. If you wish to contact Mrs. Whitmore or her representatives, I am available. Marcus read the letter 3 times. He imagined Corinne sitting in a lawyer's office in New York, because she must be in New York by now with Derek, and deciding to formally end her trespass, to take action in a way that was generous and also final. He called Dr. Patel. I don't know how to feel about this, he said. Is it kind? Is it condescending? Is she trying to make a point? Does it matter? I think it does. Why? Marcus considered this. Because if it's just kindness, I can accept it and move on. But if it's condescending, if she's trying to make a statement about me being broken and needing help, then I need to feel angry about it to maintain my sense of self. And what does your sense of self actually need right now? Dr. Patel asked. To know that I'm not the villain of someone else's story. Are you? I was the villain in Corinne's story, in Jessica's story, probably in Michael's story. And now? Now I'm just a person trying to be different. A person who made choices and is living with the consequences and trying to make better choices going forward. So why do you care if Corinne's gesture is kind or condescending? Why does it matter what her motivation is? Marcus understood what she was doing. She was trying to get him to see that Corinne's motivations were irrelevant to his own growth, that his healing was not dependent on her characterization of events. It doesn't matter, he said. I think I was looking for her to validate my changes, to confirm that I'm actually different now. Are you? I'm trying to be, but I'm not sure yet. I won't be sure for a while. Then that's your honest answer. Not I'm trying to be better. But I'm not sure if I'm actually different yet, and that uncertainty is what's true about this moment. The final movement of Part 3 came 3 months later, when Dev called Marcus at midnight. Don't come to the office tomorrow, Dev said without preamble. Actually, don't come to the office ever again. Marcus's first response was panic. Had he lost the business? Had his instability during the previous months damaged the partnership irreparably? What happened? He asked. Nothing bad, something good. I've been offered a position running development for a major LA real estate firm. They want me to build a team from scratch. I'm taking it. And I want you to come with me, but not as a partner. Not as someone with equity who's going to make decisions with your emotions one week and your obsessions the next. I want you as a lead developer, as someone who can do the work, who can be reliable, who can show up and do the job without trying to control everything. Marcus felt relief and disappointment simultaneously. Part of him wanted to argue that he'd changed, that he'd been in therapy, that he could be a partner again. But Dev was right, he wasn't ready, and possibly he wouldn't ever be. Okay, he said. Just okay. Yeah, I think you're right. I think that's probably the best thing for both of us. Good, we start next month. Better pay, better benefits, less responsibility for you. You can focus on the work instead of the business end. After Dev hung up, Marcus sat in his dark kitchen and thought about all the ways his life was shrinking. He no longer had a partnership. He no longer had a girlfriend. He didn't have the kind of relationship with his son that he'd thought he deserved. He had his house, his pool, his therapy, and his job. It was, he realized, exactly what he needed. It was the structure without the addiction, the life without the obsession, the reality without the mythology. He went to the pool and swam in the dark, doing laps until his body ached and his mind was quiet. And he let the water hold him, which was all the pool had ever done, which was all anyone had ever asked it to do. 6 months after Karen had left Los Angeles, Marcus had constructed a life that could reasonably be described as stable. He'd been promoted at his new job. He and Michael were talking weekly, building something that resembled a real relationship. He'd made a friend at the gym named Stuart who was a massage therapist and completely uninterested in Marcus's emotional archaeology. His therapist, Dr. Patel, had suggested that they could reduce sessions from twice weekly to once weekly. The pool had become something benign, a place to exercise, not a repository for his wounds. And then Karen came back. It was a Saturday afternoon in late September, and Marcus was working on the deck, replacing some weathered planters when he heard a car pull into his driveway. He almost didn't look up. Contractors came and went. Delivery services were frequent in this neighborhood. But something in the sound of the engine made him turn. It was a rental, one of those nondescript white sedans that tourists and people in transition drove. The door opened and Karen emerged, looking exactly the same and completely different. Same face, same hair, different energy. She was wearing jeans and a sweater that could have come from Target. No diamond pendant, no Instagram glamour. "Hi," she said from across the driveway. "I'm back, temporarily, just for a few weeks. Derek took a deal in London, so we'll be going there next month, but I wanted to come back to LA first." Marcus straightened, dirt on his hands, surprise on his face. "Why?" "To see you, and to apologize formally, not through lawyers to your face." He gestured for her to come into the house. She did, moving with less confidence than he remembered, as if the months in New York had made her question her right to move through his space. In his kitchen, Karen accepted a water and sat at the island where Jessica used to sit, where so many people had sat while Marcus tried to contain them, control them, understand them. "I've been in therapy in New York," Karen said. "Intensive therapy, 3 times a week, working on the trespassing impulse, the taking without asking impulse, the whole deep pathology of it." She smiled sadly. "Turns out that childhood trauma really does shape you in ways you don't understand until you're literally forced to face it." "I know something about that," Marcus said. "I know you do. That's actually why I'm here, because I realized something while I was in New York. You built a trap for me, and I acted like I understood it, like I could contextualize it, like I could forgive it from this place of enlightened awareness. But the truth is, I was just running away. You revealed something in me, something about how I operate, how I violate boundaries. And instead of sitting with that, I just went to New York and started therapy, which is the privileged person's way of solving problems. I threw money and professional intervention at it." Marcus listened without interrupting. "But something happened that made me want to come back." Karen paused. "I was at a pool party in the Hamptons, and there was this woman, and she kept trying to get me to go swimming with her, and I realized I was doing it again. I was assessing the boundaries, preparing to violate them, getting ready to take something that wasn't mine. And it hit me that even with therapy, even with awareness, I'm still me. And I wanted you to know that I understand what you were trying to do with the trap. You were trying to make me feel the consequences of my actions. And I want to tell you that I do feel them now." "Why would you come back to tell me that?" Marcus asked. "You could have sent a letter, you could have called." "Because I needed you to see my face when I said it. I needed you to know that I know what I did, and that I've spent the last 6 months understanding why you wanted to hurt me for doing it. And I want to apologize for making your life harder, for violating your space, for being the symbol that you could pour all your loneliness into." Marcus found himself standing up, packing, needing movement for the thoughts that were moving through him. "You know what the worst part of the trap was?" Karen waited. "The worst part was that I didn't actually want to hurt you. I wanted to want to hurt you, but what I actually wanted was for you to make me feel less alone. I wanted you to respond to my violation of you by validating that my violation was justified. I wanted you to be the villain so that I could be the victim. And when you weren't, when you were just a person with your own stuff, it broke something in me." "I know," Karen said quietly. "How do you know?" "Because Derek said the same thing, basically. When I was explaining all this to him, he said, 'You made him invisible by being his mirror. You reflected back his own stuff so perfectly that he couldn't see you. That's a kind of violation, too. Marcus sat back down. They were facing each other across the kitchen island, two people who had almost destroyed each other's lives, now trying to have a conversation about it. "Are you okay now?" Marcus asked. "I'm better, not healed, probably never healed. But I'm aware of why I do what I do, and I'm trying to make better choices. And you? Are you okay?" "I'm learning to be, I'm doing therapy, I'm trying to be a better father. I'm not driving myself crazy trying to control everything. It's slow." "That's good, that's actually really good." Karen stayed for another hour. They talked about Lowe's angels, about the weird energy of coming back to a place you'd left. They talked about therapy and Michael and Derek and Jessica and what it meant to be the kind of person who breaks things and then tries to put them back together. It was strange and painful and honest in a way that most conversations never are. When she left, she hugged him, and Marcus let himself feel the embrace without needing it to mean anything other than what it was. Two people acknowledging that they'd hurt each other and were both trying to do better. "Thank you for coming back," he said. "Thank you for letting me," Karen replied. "Take care of yourself, Marcus. Actually take care of yourself this time. Don't build new traps." "I'll try." After she left, Marcus did something he hadn't done in a very long time. He called Jessica. She didn't answer, but he left a message. "I know I don't have the right to ask for anything from you, but I wanted to tell you that you were right about everything, about the obsession, about the personal nature of it, about the way I was spiraling. And I want you to know that I've been working on it. I'm in therapy. I'm trying to be different. I don't expect you to care about any of that, but I wanted you to know anyway. I hope you're happy." She didn't call back. He hadn't expected her to. But sometime around 3 a.m. he got a text. "Glad to hear you're doing better. I mean that. Take care of yourself, Marcus." The final beat of part 4 came 2 weeks later, when Marcus received a package at his office. Inside was a framed photograph. It was from the Hamptons, and it showed Karen at a pool, standing at the edge, fully dressed. On the back, she'd written, "I went to a pool party and I didn't trespass. Progress. See you in the next life. K." Marcus put the photograph in his office drawer, not because he wanted to keep Karen in his life, but because he wanted to remember this moment. The moment where he understood that other people's growth is not about you, that Karen's healing was not his responsibility, and his healing was not Karen's responsibility. They were just two people who'd collided and bounced apart, and were trying to figure out how to move through the world without destroying things. It was, he was learning, the most anyone could really do. The pool these days was just a pool. It held water. It reflected the sky. It had no deeper meaning, no symbolic weight, no connection to Marcus's emotional reality. When he swam in it, he was just swimming. When he wasn't swimming in it, he wasn't thinking about it. This, more than anything, felt like healing. Part 5, Reckoning with Grace. 1 year after Karen had left Lowe's Angels for good, Marcus sat in his office and made a list of the ways his life had changed. This was something Dr. Patel had suggested, not to congratulate himself, but to be honest about what was different and what was still struggling. "I still sometimes feel the pull toward control, toward ordering the world to match my internal needs. I still struggle with loneliness in a way that sometimes manifests as wanting to contact people I shouldn't contact. I'm terrified of being invisible in the world, of not mattering to anyone. I haven't dated since Jessica, and I'm not sure if that's healthy processing or avoidance." He showed this list to Stuart, his gym friend, on a Saturday afternoon. Stuart, who had learned not to offer unsolicited advice but who also had opinions, said, "You're asking a lot of good questions. Most people don't do that. Most people just keep doing their shit and wonder why their life isn't working. That's not comforting. It's not supposed to be, but it's true. And the fact that you're aware of the struggle means you're probably not going to fall back into the old patterns as completely." "Probably. Yeah, probably. That's the best any of us can do." The letter came on a Tuesday in October. It was from a lawyer in London, forwarding a letter from Karen. The lawyer's note explained that Karen had stipulated this letter be sent exactly 1 year after she'd left Lowe's Angels, which the lawyer found eccentric, but had honored the request. Inside, Karen had written, "Dear Marcus, I'm writing this from London. Derek and I have settled here, and it turns out I'm actually quite good at being an expat. There's something about being in a place where no one knows you that forces you to actually ask yourself who you want to be. A year has passed since I came back to LA to apologize. I've thought about that conversation many times. And I want you to know something, you're going to be okay. I'm saying this with certainty even though I can't know the future because I can see the trajectory you're on. You're learning to live with yourself. That's the hardest thing anyone can do. I've done something I wanted to tell you about. I've created a scholarship fund for foster kids aging out of the system. It's named after my therapist because she's the one who helped me understand why I did the things I did, and I wanted to honor that. But I also wanted to honor what you taught me, which is that when we try to hurt people, we're really just trying to hurt ourselves, and there's always a better way. Derek is sitting here looking over my shoulder. We do everything together now. It's a bit much, but I like it. And he wants me to tell you that if you ever come to London, he'll take you to the best fish and chips in the city. I think that's his way of saying that he forgives you for whatever it is you feel guilty about regarding our marriage. I don't expect you to write back. I'm actually sending this from a library and getting on a plane to Paris right after, so I won't check email for 2 weeks. But I wanted you to know that you've changed, that it's visible, and that it matters. Take care of your son, take care of that pool, and maybe, eventually, take care of your heart in a way that doesn't involve water or obsession or traps. 'Kay. Marcus sat in his office and read the letter 3 times. By the third read, he was crying, not from sadness but from something more complex. A kind of relief mixed with regret mixed with gratitude for a woman who'd shown him what it looked like to do the work of becoming. He didn't respond to the letter. Corinne had made it clear she didn't want a response. But he did something else. He called the Lowe's Angels Community Pool Association, the organization Corinne had donated to in his name, and he asked about volunteering. They had a program where they taught swimming to foster kids, trying to make sure that children who had no safe spaces at least had the water. Marcus signed up to teach 2 nights a week. On his first evening of teaching, Marcus stood in the shallow end of the community pool and watched 12 kids between the ages of 8 and 16 come down the steps. They were nervous, wary, uncertain about whether the water would be safe. He understood that feeling. One girl, maybe 9 years old, hung back from the group. Her name was Myra, and the program coordinator had mentioned that she'd experienced severe trauma and was still processing trust. Marcus didn't push her into the water. He just sat on the edge of the pool and asked if she wanted to sit with him for a minute. "I built a trap once," he told her. "A long time ago for a woman I thought was violating my space. And I was so focused on the trap, on making it perfect, on making sure it would work, that I forgot that the person I was trapping was also just a human being trying to survive." Myra looked at him with the clarity that traumatized children often have, the ability to see through bullshit. "Did the trap work?" she asked. "Not the way I wanted, but it taught me something. It taught me that when you try to hurt people, it doesn't actually make you feel better." "Did you hurt the person?" "Not physically, but yes, I hurt them. And they were kind enough to forgive me, and I've spent the last year trying to understand why they were kind when I didn't deserve it." Myra stood up. "I'll try the water," she said. He held her hand as she came down the steps into the shallow end. She went slowly, testing each step, and when the water reached her shoulders, she looked up at him with an expression of triumph. "I'm in the water," she said. "You are." "And I'm safe." "You are." By the end of the evening, Myra was floating on her back in the shallow end, and Marcus was teaching another kid how to do the dead man's float, and another was practicing their backstroke. And for the first time in years, he felt like his presence in the world might actually be useful. Michael called him on the drive home. "How was it?" Michael asked. Michael had become someone who asked real questions, who actually wanted to know the answers. "Good, really good. I taught a girl named Myra how to trust the water." "That's cool, Dad. That's really cool." The word Dad still felt new and fragile, but Marcus was learning to accept it without trying to make it mean more than it meant. "How's school?" "Crushing it. My design professor said I have real talent. He wants me to apply for this internship program in San Francisco next summer. It's competitive, but he thinks I could get it." "That's amazing, Michael. I'm really proud of you." "Thanks, Dad." After they hung up, Marcus drove past the turnoff to his house and instead went to the Overlook, a place where you could see the entire sprawl of Lowe's Angels in the dark. All the lights spread out like someone had spilled stars on the landscape. He thought about Corinne, somewhere in Europe, building a life without violation or obsession. He thought about Michael, building a life based on what he actually wanted instead of what his father wanted. He thought about Myra, learning that the water could be safe if you approached it slowly, if someone held your hand, if you believed that not everything was a trap. And he thought about the year that had passed, the slow, agonizing work of becoming someone different, someone more honest, someone less hungry for control. It wasn't redemption. That would be too neat, too final. It was just life continuing the way it always did, the way it had to. The final moment of Part 5 came 6 months later, on a random Thursday evening. Marcus was sitting in his office, the same office where he'd spent months obsessing over security footage and building traps and losing himself, when he got a notification. Karen had tagged him in an Instagram post. He almost didn't click on it. Social media had become something he'd learned to avoid, but something made him look. It was a photograph of the scholarship fund's first scholarship ceremony. In the center of the photo was Karen, and next to her was a young woman, maybe 22, holding a scholarship certificate and crying happy tears. And Karen had written, "Introducing Alina, the first recipient of the Morrison Scholarship Fund. Alina aged out of foster care 2 years ago with $2,000 and a dream of going to college. Now she's in her second year at LSE studying social work. She wants to spend her life helping other foster kids. This is what grace looks like. This is what happens when we decide to build something instead of trap something."